Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and I'm doing my January wrap-up today, and I also want to tell you a little bit about my plans for February because I'm not going to have another chance to do so before it's here. And there are 2 month-long readathons that if you're not aware of, I would like you to know about so you can join if you like. One is the Retro Romance Readathon created by Storm Reads. I'll link the announcement below. I'm excited about that because it gives me the opportunity to read a couple of very odd antique books that I picked up. I had them in a haul a while ago, but they're from like the late 40s and early 50s, and I think at least one of them is a romance and the other one might also be. They're either that or women's fiction. I can't really tell from the synopses, but I think it's a good opportunity to try those out. But you don't have to read anything quite that old to be considered retro. I think the announcement video said that like 90s and before is probably retro because that was like 20 to 29 years ago. Secondly, there's the Black-A-Thon, and it is going to be extra big and interesting and widespread this year. This is created by Jessie of Bow Ties and Books, and it is competition styles. So there's a team romance, a team horror thriller, a team sci-fi fantasy, and a team literary, and something else goes with the literary. I'm going to join team romance because even though sci-fi fantasy is like my favorite genre, I can read romance a lot faster, and I'm kind of competitive, so that's the thing. And like there are particular prompts and stuff like that, and there's also a Instagram part going on and Twitter sprints and like some movies that you can watch along at the same time and lots of fun stuff like that. So I'm very excited to like pick out what little bits I want to do and like make content surrounding that, so that's very exciting. But about the wrap up, I read 5 whole books this month. The whole month. To be fair, I started a few more books, but that's all I finished. I'm only like 30 to 40% into those other books, so like yeah. But the last like 3 books I read in like 24 and 12 hours, so like it was the first 3/4 of the month that went very non-reading-y. And I don't even know what I was doing. Like, I don't even think I was rereading a bunch of books. I don't know what I spent my time on early this month. Oh, wait, now I do. I was doing a lot of art this month. I was posting every day on my art channel, and I read a lot more after I stopped posting every day on my art channel. Yeah, that's what it was. Okay, mystery solved. So let's start with the ebooks. I read Dragon Unleashed by Grace Draven. It was the second in the, what's it called? The Fallen Empire series. So this is one of those series where you've got epic fantasy type stuff, and it's following a couple in one book and then a different couple in another book as they get together, kind of like what Jeffy Kennedy does. This one is some of my less favorite of Grace Draven's books, but that's like still pretty good because I have very high standards for Grace Draven in general. A lot of my favorite fantasy romances are by her. The romance part I liked better than the romance in the last one. That one took me a long time to get into because there was a captive lady falling in love with her captor trope. It wasn't super bad. It was like the best version of that I've ever seen, but it still had that kind of trope to it. This one did not have that trope, and I liked it quite a bit better. There's a lot of like secrets and mysteries. Anyway, I liked it a fair amount. Definitely read the first book first, and if you don't like that one, you probably won't like this one. But if you like that one, you'll probably like this one. Then I read the Enchanted Sonata, which I've been wanting to get around to for a long time. I love the Nutcracker story, at least when it's super fleshed out. Like retellings, like the Barbie retelling. I absolutely love that. And I love a lot of the magical weird stuff that goes on, and the like children-oriented magic with all the candy and the toys, the whole toys theme with the Nutcracker and thing. And I really enjoyed this one. Like, this one is on par, if not better, than the Barbie version for me, which is a high standard for me because I love it and it has a lot of nostalgia to it. And this one made me feel a lot of nostalgic, wonderful childhood feelings, and I loved the romance. I loved it. It was so sweet and precious, and just made me really happy. And I love the magic system where music is magical, and like the way that it makes you feel, like how some music feels light and airy could actually make light, and music that reminds you of your childhood, or reminds a lot of people of their childhoods, can be a summoning song for children. And that was just absolutely fascinating. I really loved it. And I love the side characters, how much we got to see of the side characters and how they were important, even though they weren't like relationally important to the main characters. They were very important to the plot, and even though they're like little people, they weren't royalty or had magic powers, they were still really important. I liked that a lot. And generally the world building was just so immersive and nostalgic and beautiful. I loved it a lot. I read an e-arc of The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie O, and this was also so gorgeous. The world building, or the vibes that I got, were similar to certain episodes of Kami-sama Kiss, where the main lady goes down to conferences of the gods and spends time in like the places where the gods lived. It felt a lot like that because our main character goes down under the sea to where the sea god lives, and also a lot of the other gods live in the same area of the spirit world. And even though they're from two different mythologies, this book is Korean and Kami-sama Kiss is Japanese. There are a lot of similarities. So in this world, girls have been sacrificed one every year to try to get the sea god to calm down, because they're having a lot of storms in the rainy season, which is the summer. And directly after, they throw a girl into the sea, and a dragon comes up and like grabs the girl. So at least, you know, they're not just throwing a girl into a sea, they actually get to see a dragon take the girl, and like it makes some amount of sense. They aren't just making it up out of their heads because they hate women. The seas actually calmed down, so they've been doing this for 100 years. And one day, our main lady's brother's girlfriend is set to be sacrificed, and our lady sacrifices herself instead so that her brother's heart won't be broken, which is slightly illogical because obviously his heart's still gonna be broken because it's his sister. But anyway, she goes down and travels to the spirit world where the sea god lives, and meets a bunch of different deities and various, what are they called, mythological creatures, and they are all really interesting. She also, a lot of the spirits that live down there are just old dead people, so she meets some spirits who used to just be humans, and she gets embroiled in a big political thing about surrounding the sea god, because she's supposed to be the sea god's bride, but he's kind of asleep and not up to marrying anyone. So there's like a red string of fate and all sorts of prophecy type stuff, and like people trying to protect the sea god and people trying to assassinate the sea god and blah. And she meets some really cool people, and I love the relationship she formed and the different mythological creatures she meets and all that world building. Okay, my battery died, so I used the time I was charging to go do my makeup. My new palette that I found, I thought it was just powder in the store, but it's like this goopy stuff, and it has a lot more vavoom with the color that I'm used to with my powdered stuff. So if it looks a little funny, it's because I haven't practiced with this new stuff yet. And in summary, I freaking love that book, and I'm so excited to see more from this author. Then I read A Chorus Rises, the sequel to A Song Below Water, which I loved 2 years ago. This is about one of the main antagonists from the first book. So I was a little unexcited about it and wasn't sure if I was gonna like it because I really didn't like her in the first book. And sure enough, this is, you know, a redemption arc book. I expected it to be a redemption arc book, but it took a little bit longer to get to the redemption part than I thought. So you spend a lot of the book being kind of irritated at the character because she's not sorry for what she did in the first book, and is kind of doubling down on everything. So that's a little frustrating, but the book is also about her being removed from that situation. the very toxic situation she was in, and meeting people who think of her a lot differently than people at home do, and who treat her a lot differently, who are her extended family, who are not magical people. And that helps her a lot. And seeing her interact with those people, I feel like helped a lot, because she didn't have the specific problems with them that she had with the people back home who she was mean to. And when she doesn't have a specific problem with people, she treats them kind of okay. But it's a lot about seeing past your privilege, and like, so in this world there are creatures called Elikos who are like particularly good looking and are like charming and are able to like make people around them happy and like them just by the way their voice tinkles when they talk. And so the world tries to separate her into her two parts. She's either an Elikos or a black girl, not both. And that was really interesting to look at. It was a lot about how she purposely distances herself from the black community because it keeps her safe. But this book is also about her discovering that the way that she has gone about that has actually led to more harm for other black women who don't have her same privilege. And it's fascinating, and you know, by exploring a particular type of privilege that doesn't exist in the real world, this whole Elikos thing, it like makes the topic easier to talk about, I think, or more, less charged, less people already have a stance about it, which is a thing that a lot of fantasy and sci-fi does by taking certain aspects of a situation like racism or homophobia and plunking it down in a totally different society or different context, and tries to get you to look at it from a different view than what you've always done before. That's a big thing that sci-fi and fantasy does, and I really like that, and so this was really interesting. The ending was magnifique. It was just really, really good. And this one was one that I read in like 24 hours. It was super engaging, even though I didn't like the main character a lot. It was really interesting to see her interact with her family, and it was really interesting to see where she was coming from, and somehow just the way that Bethany C. Morrow writes just really sucked me in. Which is usually impossible to do with an unlikable main character, but it was done. So I read it in about 24 hours, so I didn't stay very long in the unhappy, how is this going to turn out phase. Social commentary that went on in this was really interesting. Plus it's got a cool pink cover. Then I read Blanca and Roja by Anna Marie Mclemore, and as we know, this is only the third book I've read by them, but every time I have a similar experience. All three books I've read have had the same sort of magical realism tone. I think that's the correct name of the genre. And, you know, the lyrical quality and also the fairy tale likeness of it. But they also have this, I also have this experience every time where I can tell that the book and the characters are like, have my heart in the palm of their hands really quickly, like in the first 70 pages. That doesn't happen very often for me, and like I knew that any of these books could break my heart that early on. When you go in, it starts to feel like it's set up to be a tragedy, but Anna Marie Mclemore doesn't write tragedies, and that's why I love their work so much. It really gets to me. Kind of like how animes tend to get to me, some of the ones that are my favorites, and the way the game Fire Emblem gets to me, the series of games, and it's really hard to explain, but I get attached to the characters really quickly, and they have a really strong emotional impact on me, even if I haven't even been exposed to them nearly as much as I am exposed to other characters, who don't affect me as much. It's a very strange thing. But this one is a retelling combination of Snow White and Rose Red, and Swan Lake has elements of both of those. Blanca and Roja, of course, is white and red. That's where most of the story comes from, but swans are involved, where swans have made this deal with this family a long time ago that that in every generation, 2 girls will be born, and one will be a child of the family, and one will turn into a swan at around 15, and they don't know which one. And so these 2 sisters have grown up with this hanging over their head, and each of their parents has a favorite one that they want to be the one to survive. It makes for super messed up family dynamics, but something that is somewhat different about these 2 sisters is that they are dedicated to staying together and making themselves so indistinguishable from each other that the swans won't be able to choose between them, and they love each other and are not willing to let this prophecy type thing separate them. And so it's all about the swans arriving and threatening to take one of them, and another prophecy about how one of them could save themselves and how that affects them and how they deal with that. And also 2 boys getting dragged into it and having magical stuff, part of which is part of the Snow White and Rose Red story. One of them turns into a bear and they like take in the bear. So I'm glad that I read a closer to the original retelling of that story last year, so I can like compare and contrast parts that are similar and different, because before that I had never actually heard the story before. That wasn't one of the ones I was familiar with. But I have loved Swan Lake since I was a kid, and I watched the Barbie version of that, and I found that really interesting, those concepts, which also has a little bit of a dualism to it because we have a black swan and a white swan. So I really, really love this. I love the relationships between the characters. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4 to 5 relationships between all of these different characters and how they interact differently. I really liked that and how complicated it was, but it wasn't confusing. Like, I felt like it was explained and shown really well. But yeah, next month I'm going to be reading a lot of romances, but I will probably still also read some more books, including some of the books I've started already this month. Hopefully I will actually finish next month. I'd love to know what you've been reading lately, what you've enjoyed or not. I hope you had a nice January, and I look forward to sharing February with you all. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!